Hi folks, today is March 1st, 2013, and about 3 weeks ago here in Newtown, Connecticut, we had over 2 feet of snow. Now behind me, if you take a look, you're going to see an Arnold's Promise witch hazel, which is in full bloom. And what I'd like to do today is to just show you some plants that bloom early in the spring. Now many people think of Forsythia as being the first plant to bloom, and I'd just like to assure you that there are plenty of other plants that are a little bit more spectacular and bloom a little bit earlier than Forsythia. The first one I'd like to show you is our Arnold's Promise witch hazel. Now this is just coming into bloom, and Arnold's Promise is nice because it's going to flower for a very long time, and it's got these very nice bright yellow flowers. The reason it flowers for a long time is because it's so cold out that even though the plant is in bloom, it almost gets preserved, almost like when you take daffodils and put them in a cold room in your house so they don't flower too quickly. It's the same idea with this witch hazel. So the witch hazel is going to come into bloom usually in early March, late February, and the flowers will persist for a good 4 to 5 weeks. It depends how quickly it gets warm. As these flowers open up, they're actually going to unfurl. They're very tight right now, but they'll unfurl and become kind of stringy-like, hanging down. Now the view we're looking at here is actually out the back window of my home. So you'd be looking at the kitchen window and seeing this beautiful witch hazel as you're looking out. And if that doesn't kind of lighten up the dreary winter landscape, I don't know what does. Now again, here we are, it's March 1st, we're walking through the landscape, and these are some Forsythia behind me here. Now the flowers on these Forsythia are just starting to get larger and swell and get ready to bloom. We've already got our witch hazel in bloom. I'm going to show you the skimmia in bloom, and we've got some Cornelian cherry as well, where the flowers are actually farther along. So you don't have to wait for Forsythia to come to bloom to have that early spring color. Now this group of plants right over here is called Skimmia Japonica. Look at the nice evergreen habit it has. It stays very low to the ground, looks very pleasing with the snow around it. But over the winter, the plant actually developed its blooms, and it's about to come into full bloom. Now Skimmia does not have the most decorative flower in the world. You'll barely notice them unless you're right on top of the shrub. But then after the blooms, you're going to end up with these beautiful red fruits. Now right behind me is a Cornelian Cherry dogwood. The blooms are getting large. I'll have to zoom in for you. The blooms are just starting to get larger and getting ready to bloom and give you just a really gorgeous early yellow flower. Now your Cornelian Cherry is going to bloom before the Forsythia bloom. So once again, we're going to have early bloom in the garden. There's snow on the ground. Before the pile of snow behind melts, this tree will be in full bloom. A lot of you may recognize the plant beside me. This is Andromeda or Pyrus japonica. It's an evergreen shrub, and it's going to have white flowers, bell-shaped flowers. They're going to droop down. Now this Andromeda is not going to be in bloom for another probably 3, possibly 4 weeks or so. But it's one of the first evergreens to come into bloom in the spring. If you're looking for the nice evergreen color and early spring bloom, I'd like to show you a different variation of the Andromeda. This is an Andromeda called Dorothy Wyckoff, which has the same idea as the Andromeda I just showed you, but the flowers are going to be a nice red color through the winter, and then they're going to be a nice pink when they emerge. You're also going to notice that Dorothy Wyckoff has this nice kind of purplish cast over the winter, adding a little bit more interest. Now if you've got Andromeda and you're always wondering why your flowers look a little bit unkempt or they kind of brown out a bit, I have seen cases where when we get the warmer weather and then we get some very heavy cold weather, sometimes the flowers will actually be burned back or die back. This plant right here is called a Lenten Rose. It's called Lenten Rose because it usually comes into full bloom around Easter. As I dig into the foliage here, I can see there's some flowers that are just starting to come out. And when the weather warms a bit, they're going to pop out, and this is going to be one of our first perennials that comes into bloom. You'll be amazed how quickly the daffodils start growing once that weather warms up. And if you ever want to have some fun, the next time you see a bunch of daffodils emerging, take a hard look, and you'll notice that the ones that have flowers on them are going to have a nice bulge in the top of the foliage there. Well, I hope I've given you a little bit of motivation as far as knowing that it's March 1st. Even though here in New England we've had a pretty rough winter, it's been fairly cold, the plants are starting to come into bloom. There's a lot of plants that are still at work getting ready to come into bloom. And once we start to get those first days that get above 40 and it stays sunny and warm, I think we're really going to see some nice things going on. So I just want to thank you all for watching again. You're more than welcome to visit my blog at landdesigns.com. I've got some great articles there about gardening. If you liked the video, please feel free to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.